Figured you got a quiz coming up. It's Tuesday or whatever day it is. I mean, it may not be next year, it may be Wednesday. Who knows? But you're gonna have a quiz coming up. It's about Native Americans. The unit is 1 day long, and there's a lot there, but you get to use your notes. As many notes as you want to write down in your notebook, you can use those for the quiz. What I'm going to do here, though, to get those notebooks ready, is I'm going to kind of go through the main heavy hitters of the quiz, things that you need to know. And then I would just write down everything you can, because even if you didn't watch those other videos, even if you weren't even in class, this video is going to get you to the finish line if you just get there. So it's going to talk about the quiz is going to start talking about like that beginning stages of removal of Native Americans. And the first act that we'll talk about is the Indian Removal Act. And you need to know that Andrew Jackson is the one that passed that. So Andrew Jackson, he's on our $20 bill. He was an interesting fellow to say the least. He passes this, even though the Supreme Court says that he doesn't have the legal right to do so. He goes, yeah, try and stop me. And this causes the event called the Trail of Tears. And the Trail of Tears, we did a little demonstration of this. We did a little activities showing you the impact of this with the popsicle sticks and other objects that you put on your arms. And this is going to cause you would say, unconstitutional migration of Native Americans to the West, mostly because they were being pushed off their lands because of hostilities and other things. The people just wanted their land is really what happened. 1/4 of all people that march on this die. So one thing you need to know about this is 1/4 of all Native Americans on the Trail of Tears will die on that trail. One of the reasons why was they were on foot. You had rampant disease. You didn't have the health care. You didn't have the proper amount of food or care given to these Native Americans. There was an issue at the Ohio River where they were the people that own the ferries that go across the Ohio River would charge Native Americans more money, like significantly more, is like 12 cents for the average American to use this ferry. They upped the price to $1, which was a lot back then. So you had Native Americans that got stuck in the wintertime on one side of the Ohio River, and they actually froze to death, which, there you go. The reason why there's this push west, it's not even a push west. After Andrew Jackson, you have this long period of time, then you get to the Civil War. After the Civil War, this idea of slavery is no longer going to hold us back from expanding west. Manifest destiny, right? And this western expansion hits, and you have this giant group of people that are going to be moving west. You have the introduction of the Transcontinental Railroad, and you have the following groups of people that are going to go west. Families, just looking for opportunity. Immigrant groups, because they were mistreated in the East. They feel like the West had the best opportunity for them. Chinese, Japanese, Irish, German, Mexican immigrant groups are going to be influx there. Former Civil War soldiers and even former slaves are moving west for just greater opportunities. So you need to know who moved west. Give me one of those groups. You could talk about former slaves. You could talk about people from the Civil War veterans, and so on and so forth. Let's talk about Custer. So Custer is one of these soldiers from the Civil War. He got shot down. His horse got shot out from underneath him like 11 times during the Civil War. He never got hurt. He was very much into his looks. He was a very vain person, and he used to spend a lot of money on velvet clothes and these different types of perfumes for his hair, put cinnamon in his hair, that type of thing. And he goes AWOL for a while. He abandons his men at one point to go hang out with his wife. And then eventually he gets kicked out for a while. I think it was for a year. And then they ask him to come back to help out with this issue in the West, in the Dakotas. There were Native Americans there, and they didn't want to leave their land, and they sent Custer up there to take care of them. So Custer and his men go up there to fight against this guy named Sitting Bull. And so one of the questions is going to ask you, what was the Native American chief that he fought against? And that was Sitting Bull. And they obliterate Custer and his men, mostly because they're outnumbered. And Custer takes his 200 men versus 3,000 Native Americans, and they just get obliterated. It's not even close. The Black Hills will be in the Native American hands for not much longer, because you're going to have an influx of more soldiers after this. There's like a rallying cry to get more people up there. to take to take this land. Then we get into Geronimo, and Geronimo was somebody that was in the western areas, territories of America, and it's going to ask you, what two countries did he fight against? He actually fought against the U.S. government. But he also fought against the Mexican government, so he fought against two. Geronimo will spend the rest of his life after this fight being kind of circused around, kind of like a Santa Claus, if you will, just brought to places. Oh, look at it, it's the Native American Geronimo. Oh, come sit on his lap, take a picture with him, that type of thing. And he does this just to get food for his fellow tribesmen and his family. We'll talk about Wounded Knee, and it's going to ask you what religious practice did they do for Wounded Knee that got the American soldiers all upset. It was the ghost dance, and that's the religious practice they were doing. What act? There's going to be an act. Now, we're going to talk about this assimilation process that took place against Native Americans after these pushing of west and removing them of their land. And one of the assimilation processes starts because of the Dawes Act. The Dawes Act was meant to Americanize Native Americans. We talked about this in class, how that idea is really odd to say. But yeah, remember the Dawes Act was the one that kind of started this whole boarding school stuff that we talked about. And speaking of boarding schools, know some of the things that they took away from these Native Americans when they went there. They took away their look, their hair. They literally cut their hair when they came in. They took away their religious practices. They took away their name. They took away their clothes. They separated them from their families. Like, they took away what we would say makes us our identity. They stripped all of those pieces of identity away piece by piece when these children were put into these boarding homes. And a lot of these children were forced to go into these boarding homes by not idle threats, by threats that were done towards the families at this time. Whether the intentions are good or not, they stripped away the identity of these young men and women. And then they weren't going to be accepted by American society afterwards anyway. Most of them weren't. And they also were not accepted by the Native American societies that they came from. So there's going to be this thing where we talk about this animal that was killed to extinction. Well, this push west, one of the animals that get killed to almost extinction is the buffalo, which was a necessary thing for the Native American culture and societies to use. What group of American settlers moved west and got stuck on the mountaintops and resulted in cannibalism? The Donner Party. They had to eat each other to survive. What invention killed the cowboy? Barbed wire. Barbed wire prevents the cowboys. What it sounds like what they're doing is they're rustling cattle from one location to another. But with the invention of this very simple idea, a wire with a little barbs on it that you could hook on these posts, it's really inexpensive to make, keeps the cattle in. You could just set up your shop next to all these trains that are getting built. The cowboy is unnecessary. Speaking of that, the Wild Wild West really wasn't that wild. It was relatively tame. There was actually more violence in the Northeast than what we consider the Wild West back in the day. And this really comes about by the gold rush. This push for people to go into the West and get gold. But the thing is, not very many people got the gold. 20,000 people will die trying to reach the West during this gold rush time. 100,000, mostly men, will travel west in just 1 year. The gold rush lasts only really 5 years, but now they established like this group of people out there, so it really builds up the California population, all of these other states in the West. The gold rush is going to make our lands flat, like ridiculously flat. In 60 years, most of the forests are turned into flatlands. And what happens is these flatlands, they keep digging up the dirt, and this flatland has now this dirt, this almost nutrient lacking dirt that's just sitting there on the top. And when those dust storms come in, you get like stuff like the Dust Bowl, which we'll talk about later. As far as Cowboys, let's go back to the Cowboys just real quick. The Cowboys needed some stuff. You need to know some things about the Cowboys. One, the hat wasn't just for looks. The hat was utilized for water. The hat was used as a shade device because they're out in the sun all day. You can get hurt with that. They needed the bandana. The bandana was used to block the dust from going into their lungs when they were riding their horses. It was used as tourniquets. So there were multiple uses of that. The saddle, an important item that the cowboys had that they needed to have back then in order to ride the horse for hour and hour and hour and hour. Coffee was an essential quality for horses or for cowboys. They needed coffee because they were sleeping 2 hours a day. The cattle themselves were a good source, a good tool for the cowboy because they could smell water from miles away. These are all the things that a cowboy would need out in the West. Like I said before, many people did not get rich from the gold rush. It was not beneficial for a whole lot of people. There was this promise, though, for land. The Homestead Act was a promise for land. You get 160 acres of federal land if you just agree to go out there and farm it. All these promises, they're going to boom the population of the West. This is where our West population grows and why we even have a population like that today. But yeah, it's not exactly the most important, the easiest way to get wealth. With that said, that's pretty much all you need to know for this unit. It's a fast unit. You take notes as much as you can. Use those notes on the quiz, and we'll go from there. Peace out.